The third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation is well underway in Beijing. What is on the agenda as China celebrates 10 years of its signature initiative? Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Calebs, sitting in for Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Welcome, everyone. World leaders are gathering in Beijing for what's being called China's most important diplomatic event of the year. Chinese President Xi Jinping welcoming his global guest, voicing enthusiasm for another golden decade of Belt and Road achievements to come. CGTN's Yao Yang has this report.
Tuesday marks the first day of the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. We've observed many of the highlights here in Beijing. First, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with a number of heads of states and government leaders. For example, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is attending the forum for the third time. Xi expressed his appreciation, adding that he would like to work together with Hungary and other countries to share the vision of cooperation. Xi also met with the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, and he said Papua New Guinea was one of the earliest Pacific Island countries to establish bilateral ties with China. And China is willing to work with PNG to deepen friendship, consolidate political mutual trust, while expanding cooperation areas. The Chinese leader had a very busy schedule on Tuesday. He also met with the Indonesian President Joko Widodo and also President of Uzbekistan Shavkat Mirziyoyev, President of Serbia Aleksandar Vučić, and other leaders of Belt and Road partner countries. Well, at the same time, on Wednesday, the opening ceremony of the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation will be held right here in Beijing. And Chinese President Xi Jinping will attend the opening ceremony, deliver a keynote speech, and hold a welcome banquet for guests. Meanwhile, 3 high-level forums will be held for in-depth discussions on the topics like connectivity, green development, and the digital economy. Another 6 forums will run parallel to this, with the themes of trade connectivity, people-to-people bonds, think tank exchanges, clean Silk Road, sub-national cooperation, and maritime cooperation. A chair statement will be issued to capture the consensus reached by participants and lay out the future direction as well as key areas of high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. Yao Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Okay, to discuss this and more, let's bring in our guest. Joining us from Beijing, Zoon Ahmed, a research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Gong is a Chinese forum expert and professor at the University of International Business and Economics. And in Sao Paulo, Gilson Schwartz is a professor of economics at the University of Sao Paulo. And here in our studio, Victor Gao, chair professor of Soochow University. I'd like to welcome all of you. It's going to be, I hope, a very lively 30 minutes of discussion. Victor, I want to begin with you. We were talking before we came on. I was there 10 years ago when this unfolded, obviously something you've been following very closely. Let's just look at the way it is being built right now. High-quality Belt and Road cooperation together for common development and prosperity, arguably the biggest initiative worldwide for a platform for international cooperation. Tell me what you think, looking back 10 years ago when this unfolded, as you saw many countries obviously very interested, where it is now and what you believe it holds in the future.
Thank you very much for having me. 10 years ago, when BRI started, it was a concept. It was the brainchild of Chinese President Xi Jinping. 10 years later, today, the BRI has become a reality. And more than 153 countries joined it. All the international organizations within the United Nations system are participating in that. And there have been so many completed solid projects in different parts of the world. And then BRI does not talk about ideology or political system. It really focuses on connectivity and infrastructure projects of all kinds. It really becomes an international public good. So I think the past 10 years is 10 years of great achievement. And at this particular moment, looking forward into the next 10 years, BRI demonstrates a sign of great confidence and great bravery of marching forward into a better 10 years for BRI.
Zoon, I could see you in the background there shaking your head at everything that our friend Victor Gao had to say. I really want to talk about one of the real jewels of this, and that, of course, is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This signature product has already brought in more than $25 billion, finding jobs for more than 236,000 people in Pakistan. Talk about this for just a minute and what you believe the forum could provide in the future in terms of opportunity for development in that region.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I was nodding my head because really in the last 10 years, we have seen transformative developments in China and across the world under the BRI. So starting with the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, actually I moved to Beijing months after the first phase of the investments was announced. This was transportation infrastructure, energy infrastructure, the port of Gwadar, and so much more. And over the last 10 years, I mean, firstly, the fact that Pakistan desperately needed these investments and other countries or typical, investors were not interested. China stepped in at a time when Pakistan needed it most. This became the biggest pillar of Pakistan's economic vision. And it was also a combination between Pakistan's domestic development plan and what China could offer, which is what the Belt and Road investments are about. 8 years on from that first announcement, we have seen the evolution of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor from hard infrastructure towards socio-economic, towards aligning further, helping Pakistan meet the SDGs, poverty alleviation, education. There is so much to talk about, but the excitement in Pakistan and other countries, given how the investments were announced, how they were implemented, the projects have fruitful results, and the impact they have on people is something that is further, pushing the kind of enthusiasm for this particular forum where the Pakistani Prime Minister is also attending. That said, so I'll also talk about the feeling in Beijing right now. Beijing is buzzing with, participants of this forum from obviously more than 130 countries and more than 4,000 participants. And the expectation, I myself am part of a group which is from different countries. We have traveled to different parts of China to understand firsthand, observe and interact with frontliners and communities that have been impacted over the years. So I think in the end, as Victor Gao also mentioned, the Belt and Road vision has manifested over these years from hard infrastructure towards understanding how we can really build a common community and we can work towards a better shared future. Tangible results are here. Yesterday at the Belt and Road CEO Forum, multiple agreements were signed. I can go on and on, but I think in a nutshell, the expectation is we will come towards greater consensus on obviously the domestic and regional challenges that countries are facing, how to address them. China and the Belt and Road are an opportunity, and this is about further aligning the vision towards more tangible results.
Gilson joins us from Latin America. And Gilson, a couple of things that Zoon just talked about I think really dovetail well into you. And one, that investment was needed. There was a void out there, and China stepped into that void. The United States, many other Western nations look at this with a certain degree of skepticism, I think, right now. But talk about what it has meant to Latin America. I mean, if you look at what's going on in Peru, that giant port that is being built there, a joint effort with China, and it could open up another route to the Pacific and really accelerate trading, if you will, into that area.
Well, in Latin America, I think the situation is quite fragile from both a political and an economic perspective. We know that Argentina is facing very, very hard times with respect to stabilization policies and resuming growth. But as a matter of fact, the continent, the Latin American continent, is also divided between Spanish-speaking countries and Portuguese-speaking. One country, Brazil, which is the largest economy. So these are challenges that create a regional situation that's not as easygoing as it could be. Distance, the different languages, the different levels of economic development. However, yes, there is a long, long history of planning for this specific way, the specific route. especially for Brazilian agricultural goods and raw materials. So I do believe that from a geopolitical perspective, this is a unique opportunity because the region has always been under the command of the United States and maybe some European powers.
Right.
But in this present situation, I think it's, on the one hand, challenges, on the other hand, an opportunity, given that the US and Europe are facing their own regional problems and global affairs. The Peru port, the idea that we can make it cheaper to export from Latin America to China and Asia, I think this is a winning concept, and this is the way to go.
You know, Gilson, one thing I'm struck by, I was in Brazil several years ago doing a documentary there, and the growing seasons are so good in that area. Brazil can grow, harvest, and get a product into a truck faster than any place on earth. However, getting it from the truck to market appears to be, is a huge problem. A lot of it rots on roadways, and it's stuck in ports. Do you see the Belt and Road, future projects coming to that area that can really influence that?
I think there is, again, a political and geopolitical issue here, because Brazil, mainly opposed to most of the experiences in Latin America, Brazil has a very strong state sector, a state development bank, the National Bank for Economic and Social Development. There is a huge powerhouse of projects in this bank, as well as other important state companies like Petrobras, the state oil company that represents a major source of investment in the country. So politically, yes, we need lots of investment in infrastructure, but it depends on mediating these accords, mediating these projects with the state banks and the Brazilian government, which is different from what's going on in most of the other Latin American countries. There is a political will to resume development projects in Brazil. So I think that partnerships with China here are really a key element. If we come to an agreement in terms of what kind of advantages, even in the regional policies, Brazil can take out of it. Recently, there's been lots of discussion about this peculiar issue. How could Brazil still be a powerhouse, a major source of building trust in the economic development of the region within the BRICS initiative, for instance? So there is a connection here between the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, and the BRICS. That is, I think, the major geopolitical challenge, and the Brazilian government is certainly going to tackle these issues. But I think on the Chinese side, must be also realized that we are also an economy with a very strong and intelligent state apparatus.
John, firstly, my apologies taking so long getting to you, but from 2013 to 2022, trade between China for the BRI has reached almost $20 trillion worldwide. It's no secret that a lot of this has gone into the continent of Africa, and if you look at these partnerships, clearly they're certainly appreciated. If you look who is showing up, we have the presidents of Ethiopia, Republic of Congo, as well as dignitaries from Kenya, Mozambique, Nigeria. Let's talk about what you believe the impact has been on the continent of Africa, and is there room, if we look at what the theme is of this, high-quality Belt and Road cooperation, do you see perhaps the BRI altering a bit more as we move into this next decade?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I would like to first emphasize, the difficulties and challenges of undertaking such grandiose infrastructures, particularly in these, very poor countries, developing countries. Typically in the past, a project like this, which always precedes economic development. Without infrastructure, you cannot develop. Projects like this takes a lot of resources, a lot of political will, capital access, and actually, let's not forget the engineering prowess of doing something like this. I think what China has done is to really accelerate this process. The Chinese engineering in infrastructure building is world famous. We've done tons of these projects before the Belt and Road project started here in China. And the capital is provided mostly by these two banks from China. And all of these things happen together and packaged in a way that these projects can be completed in very short period of time and start to function is something tend to be really, really underestimated, I think, and also underappreciated. And so I think it's from this perspective that a lot of these host countries welcome the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, back to your question about the trade and economic development following that, there are actually tons of empirical evidence that these projects, infrastructure projects, tend to accelerate trade between China and these countries, opening up opportunities for people in these countries that would not have happened, would not have had the opportunities for trade. I'll give you some good examples. Like, in Rwanda, for example, Rwanda coffee is selling very well here in China. 10, 20 years ago, nobody talks about Rwanda coffee, right? And think about the huge market here in China, huge amount of coffee imported from Rwanda, and how much of economic opportunities are bringing to the people in Rwanda, the farmers, the coffee bean planters. And they are getting, a decent income, lifting a lot of people from poverty, planting coffee beans. These are the kinds of things that tend to be neglected. China's trade with these countries has really boomed and also creates a lot of jobs. Your program mentioned 420,000 employments created by over 3,000 infrastructure projects.
Right.
I think these are probably more directly introduced jobs. There got to be other secondary induced jobs associated with economic development in these countries that are very difficult to account for, very difficult to empirically gauge. But there's no doubt that these infrastructure investments brings economic development in these countries, as well as the trade between these countries and China. And these, this is something that hasn't been seen in human history. I mean, this is a global scale,
right,
bringing a wave of infrastructures in so many countries and contributing to economic prosperity. And I think this is the significance of the project looking back after 10 years.
Victor, I want to pick up on that, because if you read articles or listen to broadcasters from the United States and much of EU, you would think that the BRI does nothing more than a debt trap for nations. It's something you've heard. It's something you've talked about. Kind of give me the pros and cons, the way you believe that's been portrayed in international media.
Well, first of all, BRI has proven to be an enabler, an equalizer, and an accelerator. Now, for any big project finance transaction in any part of the world, a good, balanced financing package is crucial, including debt as well as equity. And for anyone just to focus on the debt without talking about the equity and talking about the liberating effects about the land associated with it, and also the uplifting of the value associated with the whole region, for example, or whole corridor, is not making sense. Therefore, I think the so-called death trap is not convincing to any participating countries, because they want to have the investment, they want to have their infrastructure projects built up, they want to share China's truth. That is, if you want to become rich, build a road. That applies to almost every country in the world. The United States built up its national railway system at the end of the 19th century, built up its interstate highway system in the 1950s, right, etc. Why shouldn't all the other countries do the same? This is what BRI is for all these participating countries.
And Victor, I also have to ask you about Vladimir Putin attending. Right now, Russia is obviously China's largest trading partner. Both countries signing a statement that deepens the strategic partnership between the two. Tell me what you think about Vladimir Putin being there. What is the purpose, and how is it being embraced internationally?
Well, when we talk about President Vladimir Putin of Russia, we need to keep in mind, first and foremost, that China and Russia share a common border of 4,300 kilometers long, which has been an unarmed, peaceful border since 1989, and especially since 1991. Now, if anyone really expects that they can throw a wedge into the good neighborly relations between China and Russia, they probably are indulging in fantasy. Therefore, President Vladimir Putin of Russia is now being welcomed as one of the principal guests of honor at the BRI. And I'm also happy to see that Putin has met with quite a few other heads of state also coming to Beijing for the BRI summit. And it means that not only China-Russian relations are solid, Russia also has working normalize the relations with many other countries in the world. And the Western world does not represent the totality of the international community. And they should not expect that everyone else, more than 200 countries in the world, should fall in step with, let's say, the marching order of the Western countries, because they do not represent the overwhelming majority of mankind as a whole.
Zoon, the newly formed Belt and Road Languages and Culture Network. Talk to me about that. It had its inaugural meeting just before the forum. Its job is to bolster, obviously, language education and promote linguistics connectivity. Tell me why that is so important moving forward and what this means.
Okay, so first I'll quickly just also add to what Professor John Gong was talking about, how we see an actual impact in trade based on the investments between China and the Belt and Road countries, and actually it's more than 6% annually, the increase in trade between China and Belt and Road countries. So that's something I just wanted to quickly add to. So obviously, let's also, recall that recently, as we have seen the evolution of the Belt and Road Initiative, we have also seen the launch of the Global Development Initiative, the Global Civilizations Initiative, and also the Global Security Initiative. Now, the Global Civilizations Initiative in particular stresses on the fact that, civilizations throughout history, we have seen that with better, interactions, understanding about each other, mutual respect, and also recognizing the innate reality that our diversity can be our biggest strength. So in line with that, multiple initiatives have been announced, and this particular one is going to help improve the people-to-people understanding and interaction between China and Belt and Road countries. So obviously, language is a very important part of that cooperation, of that understanding. And we see that even in China, actually multiple languages are being taught on the university level. It's very common in major cities of China to come across, people who have graduated in more than different languages across the world. And China really stresses on the importance of people-to-people interaction.
Absolutely.
When you study a language of a country, you can understand their history and perspective better. So I think if I want to say in a nutshell, this announcement is also in sync with China's major investment in providing scholarships, education opportunities from universities down to even vocational and technical education, which a lot of developing countries need. And therefore, enhancing the quality of skills of people from countries that didn't have those opportunities in most cases, and also enabling a more positive, fruitful people-to-people interaction engagement. That is in itself, contributing to that understanding of a shared future through shared experiences. And here we see that language, focusing and giving priority to languages and bringing, as also Victor Gao mentioned, this is very important that we recognize the majority of the world is in the global south, and the way China is enabling new opportunities for people across the global south. It's not just China and another country. China is creating multilateral platforms. And this language and culture network, will expedite that process, that we can envision, we can interact, and we can work together more closely.
Gilson, when we look at the projects that have been financed through the Belt and Road Initiative, you have bridges, highways, railways, hospitals, sport stadiums. How is this infrastructure development, how is it really boosted, in your opinion, global economic growth?
Well, first of all, we are going through a major technological revolution all over the planet. So even the leisure space, entertainment industries, all infrastructures are now subject to an underlying technological change. That's the digitalization of every process. So I think that the most important thing when we try to understand the future of the Belt and Road Initiative is to remember that China is also championing one of the most important initiatives in economic terms and technological terms. That's by developing the telecom industry, and Huawei that has become also a target of US and European governments. So there is a clash of titans, so to speak,
Sure.
in terms of controlling the future of the digital economy. So infrastructure projects, bridges, ports, everything that is solid, that is really built with engineering, civil engineering, etc. This infrastructure only makes sense as long as it's connected to major control infrastructures that are digital. So I think that China is also in a good position to complement the idea of infrastructure with the idea of actually digitalizing infrastructure. And that's the point that really hits one of the major issues in the competition with the US. So I see infrastructure projects as the future for a shared development model all over the planet, as long as China reinforces the technological perspective. That includes also technical education. So it's really a knowledge economy, technology-based infrastructure must be connected to that kind of framework.
You know, John, we only have about a minute and a half left, but if we look at China's goals, its international actions, environmental concerns are really high up there. Looking forward, do you see BRI transitioning into a greener, more sustainable, environmentally sound platform?
Yeah, well, BI, the concept of BI from an environmental perspective also has been really evolving. You know, in the early days, China did build, for example, coal-fired power plants in many countries. And because, you know, this is a technology that's being widely used in China and is pretty much developed in China, you know, very mature, you know, let's say 200 megawatts coal-fired power plant technology. We have built hundreds of these plants in China, you know, in the past decade or so. But nowadays, China stopped building this. I think a few years ago, President Xi made an open commitment that China will stop building any coal-fired power plants in any country. So, you know, obviously, what it really means is that all the investment and all the engineering capacity and also the employment associated that have become sunk cost, right? And it's already passed. That's you know, that's a good example.
John, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're out of time. You wonder where the time goes. I certainly want to thank all of our panelists for this insight into the BRI Forum, and we're going to leave it there. I'm Sean Calebs here in Washington, D.C. As always, thanks for watching another edition of The Heat.